Yeah.
And I will begin with the conclusion. He was a man, may Allah have mercy on him, who was such an individual who lived 110 or 110 plus some years. And all of those years were used in preparation for this day that he has passed. This day that he has passed, no one, not one person can witness that he spent a single day working simply for the dunya. Rather, every single day of those 110 plus years were used to prepare and to get himself ready for this day, a Tuesday, the 2nd or the 3rd of the Qa'dah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we've been in Mauritania for just over 2 days. After arriving Wednesday morning, today it's before Jumu'ah on the Friday. We're about to leave for Jumu'ah inshallah in the city with a big sheikh here. Inshallah we'll be visiting the sheikh. From the last time that we spoke, we had just reached Geru, which is about 568 kilometers away from Nouakchott, on a two-lane highway, which is basically one lane going one way and the other lane going the other way. There wasn't much traffic on the road, and pretty much what you see is just some villages with some huts, mostly huts and tents. So it seems like the tent culture here is still very much still intact. On the way, you don't see too many big cities because most of the population of Mauritania, which is about 3 million in all, a lot of that population, just less than 1 million, is based in Nouakchott because that's where the work is. When we visited one of the other shuyukh, Sheikh Ba, his son told us there that there's no work there to be found. So either a person will stay there to study. If they want work, they'll have to come to Nouakchott or go somewhere else outside the country. So that's how it's made up. You don't see, so far we haven't seen some really abject poverty, and we haven't seen that yet. I'm sure it exists because we're staying at a friend's house in Nouakchott right now who, Brother Mukhtar, this is where we're videoing it from, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him. So we took a walk around. There's a lot of good houses and things around this area, and this city is just sprawling, it seems. So when we got to Geru, which is a place where another famous scholar lives, whose name is Sheikh Khatri, that's from there we took about a 3 to 3.5 hour drive, literally over sand first for about 60 to 70% of it, which is literally you're just driving through the sand on tracks that some other car before you has made, and sometimes you get stuck. But it was a nice 4x4 pickup, so it was good. We managed to get there. Then there's a road that they've just made recently through the mountain, over the mountain, to be able to go over. And after that, it's about 1.5 hours of just stone, and that you're going over. And that is where you're probably going about 5 to 10 miles an hour, if that much. And it's just a bumpy ride all the way through. That whole journey from Geru to this place called Tuwaymarat, where Sheikh Murabit Al Hajj and his family and his tribe live, of about 20 houses. There's about 20 houses there. And again, a lot of tents. In fact, Sheikh Murabit Al Hajj, when we met him, he was in a tent. That's where he's lying down. So it's a 66 kilometer trek, that is, which took us about nearly 4 hours. Over 3 hours for sure. About 3.5 to 4 hours, that's what it took. And when we did the sandy part, before we got onto the stony part into the mountains, they the driver had to get off and inflate his tires so that it could go over the stone more easily. And likewise on the way back, he had to deflate his tires when he got onto the sand, otherwise you'd keep getting stuck in the sand. So Sheikh Murabit Al Hajj and his family, they literally live away from civilization. And I think that from what they're telling me is that was intended. That he just wants to be out of civilization, just full zuhd, just wants to be away from everybody and just wants to do his ibadah there. And there wasn't even any cell phone coverage, mobile coverage in the area. The closest place from Tuway Marat, which is the village that they're in, is this mountain that you have to get to, which probably takes about half an hour or something, to get your cell phone coverage, it seems, your mobile coverage. Electricity there is through solar panels, so there's no direct electricity grid. He literally seems to have picked this spot just to be away. So for them to get supplies and everything, they have to take a pickup truck, which takes about 3.5 hours to get to the closest city, and that is the closest city. Giru is the closest city. So after spending a good half a day there, we managed to see Sheikh Murabit Al Hajj. We met his sons, his grandsons, and some other members of the family. Then we met one of the other great scholars there as well, Sheikh Had Amin, who's about 80 years old, very pleasant individual. MashaAllah, he was sitting there, very pleasant individual, smiley face. Had a good chat, inshallah, with him as well. Sheikh Murabit Al Hajj, he is generally not speaking these days. It's been a long time. Maybe once a day or something, he says he kind of gets up and speaks to the family, etc. But otherwise, he's generally lying down and sleeping. And while we're there sitting by him, he's sleeping. He's not conscious as such. Suddenly you just start listening to him, and he's saying La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, and then he stops. And that was, that is basically tells you that whatever you're used to saying when you're conscious abundantly, then you would probably do that when you're not in your conscience.
He was so divorced from the dunya that when he was offered that they would build buildings or masjids for him to teach in and out of, that he would say, no, I'm just going to sit under a tree and whatever student wants to come comes.
SubhanAllah. Once one of the great imams of the latter generation, Sayyid Muhammad Ali al-Maliki, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he was speaking about this Rabbaniyah, the lordly nature, and he especially relates to ulama. And he's saying the alim al-Rabbani. He said the scholar who is Rabbani, the scholar who is Rabbani is despite his rank with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of knowledge and piety, he teaches children. Hakada. That's the alim al-Rabbani. He'll teach a child ba, ta. That's why people who go to the desert, as many Buddhists have, and they see Murabit Al Hajj or Hajj Amin or what have you, it's beautiful to see them. These are imams who have the entire tradition inside of their head, yani. I mean, ulama study at their feet as true pupils, as true students. We know people who've studied upon Murabit Al Hajj, what's called Khalil. And if faqih, you used to do Khalil once, you've memorized it once, this is their great book in Maliki fiqh. People studied upon Murabit Al Hajj not just once, which makes you an alim, a faqih, 4 times upon Murabit Al Hajj. And every time they study upon him, it's like a different world that they're in with the great Imam radiallahu ta'ala anhu warda. Yet you will see him teaching a child a, ba, ta, tha, a, u, I, ba, bu, bi, ta, tu. The basic way we sort of read and we articulate the language.
And I've said this in the life of Murabit Al Hajj many times. I've not seen a better example to describe Murabit Al Hajj than that was said of Imam Al-Awza'i, where that he said that it was said about him that if he was told that you are going to die tomorrow, he wouldn't have increased anything. He wouldn't have been able to increase anything of his worship. It would not have been possible for him to make his worship for that day better. And these were his actions. Either he would be teaching people knowledge, or he would be reciting the Quran, or he would be, and the only thing that would interrupt these things is to go to the masjid and pray the Fard prayer. And if he had some time, then he would review the books, and those were his actions that he would do.
You got a chance to study under Sheikh Murabit Al Hajj, right? And he is known to be probably the best type of traveler. That's why he got that name, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that, inshallah?
MashaAllah, both of us had the honor of at least for a small amount of time, studying and getting du'as from Murabit Al Hajj. He's known as Murabit Al Hajj over here. In Mauritania, usually they call him Al Hajj wal Fahfu.
Yeah.
Fahfu is like the nickname of his great grandfather, who was also a great alim. The reason they call him Al Hajj is because he made Hajj on foot. How long ago did he make it? We don't know for sure, but we do know that he remembers hearing the announcement regarding the fall of the caliphate while he was in Makkah Mukarramah as a teenager, maybe 17, 18 years old. And he made Hajj on foot through the overland route, and he came back. I heard that he went in a qafila, in a caravan of somewhere more than a dozen people from his locality, and he's the only one who made it back.
And he's still alive, right?
And he is still alive.
How old is he now, around?
He is over 100 years old. We don't know for sure how old he is, but he's over 100 years old. And I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the presence of such people in this world. And I fear what barakat will be snatched away if such people, Allah ta'ala takes them back. He literally trained 4 generations of alpha Dawn scholars in Mauritania. The first generation of his students have almost all died themselves. There's very few of them left. Murabit Ahmed Fal is one of them. There's very few of them left. Haddamin is one of them. Allah Ta'ala keep them, preserve them as well. Very incredible people as well. But he is a person. How do we say? There's a term used in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and in the Quran regarding a person of piety and righteousness to the point where they have reached a special maqam with Allah Ta'ala, that such and such person is a wali of Allah. And I always thought that this is a very novel idea, that somebody reaches such a high maqam with Allah Ta'ala, that Allah Ta'ala says that I become the eye with which he sees, and the ear with which he hears, and the hand with which he grasps. Ila akhir al-hadith. That's a hadith of Sahih Bukhari, hadith Qudsi narrated in Sahih Bukhari. I thought that this was something very theoretical piece of knowledge until I saw him. And I saw that this man is 24 hours a day there. All he does is he sits and he faces the Qibla and recites Quran all day. And if there's a lesson you want to take, he'll drop out for a minute, teach you your lesson, and then he'll go back to reciting Quran, and doesn't really say much more than that. The only thing I saw him is, other than teaching a lesson, he reads his salat, and he will say wa alaikum assalam because it's a Sharia obligation. And he will maybe every now and then you'll hear him reciting some verses from the Qasida Burda, or giving dua to somebody who asks